In this video, I'm going to be doing an overview of FactoryTalk View Studio, and we're going to be looking at all the different Windows tabs, just so that you'll kind of hopefully get a little better feeling about where to go to do what. So that's all this video will be, is just that. So normally when I've already created my application, we went through the first video, and that's where I'm at now. So I went through that there. Now most of the time your windows are not going to be like this with no information in it when it first populates. But I closed all these down, collapsed them down to where it's all under here, just so that you can see. So if you get in here and you see nothing in this window at all you see is where you had named your application, then please expand it by hitting the plus sign and continue to hit the plus sign. Come down to the next one, hit the plus sign. You want to come down to the next one, and just that way right there, so you can kind of see how everything's breaking out. So don't worry, as long as you see your application name here, everything should be underneath of a plus sign somewhere, so you can expand it. What we're going to do first is, again, once you have created an application and give it a name, when it does populate, you should at least see the name that you named it right here. And this right here is the name of this laptop. So this right here is a SM-LN2-226-LT15. So that means I've got laptop number 15. So if you look up to the right hand upper corner of your laptop, you should have a label on there, and it should be the same name, and this number right here should be different. There should be 15 different laptops. So anyways, if you see that there, you should be in good shape. So the first thing I want to show you is a few of the things that's in this Windows Explorer window here. So it's just like Windows Explorer, and it's similar to Studio 5000 in the way that it breaks down. Obviously it ain't the same thing, but it's very similar to the way that it breaks down. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into System. So this right here is where most of the system settings are going to be, exactly what it says, are going to reside. So the first one we're going to go into, we're going to double click on this one that says Project Settings. And I'll show you the things that you may have to change from time to time, and some of the things that we'll be talking about during this. I think in the first lesson we talked about when we first create an application, you have to select what screen size you have. And sometimes, later on, maybe you picked the wrong one. Maybe you was designing it for this size, but you ended up going with a different size. So this is where this is handy, is that even if you selected the wrong one, or later on, let's just say if you have an application where they don't make that one anymore or something, and all you have on the shelf or whatever is this one, all you have to do is go into here and select it, and it'll convert that file for you. So just keep that in mind. So there's all you would have to do in order to do that. Okay, so you can do that. Also, when you go to Runtime, this means is that when you're, because again, there's two different things going on here. This software here is the design or the application, where you create that application. And I would look at it more of as this is how you design your programming. But the touchscreen can't run this, so you have to create a runtime to run on your HMI. So this right here is why it's talking about runtime, is that once you go into runtime, you can actually dictate several different things that goes on in your application under this tab. So the only one that we'll be worrying about is in some of the things that we do is this enable auto logout. So what this right here does is that if you was to be in a secured screen or have secured visibilities of certain buttons and stuff that you don't want certain people to have unless they have a passcode, what can happen is you can click this and you'll see that this right here was grayed out. Now it ain't. You can actually say that after so many minutes or whatever, if no one has been touching the screen, basically it's inactive, that it'll actually go ahead and log out of whatever, and it'll go back to like a default login screen. So anyways, so when you do that there, I'd always advise to return to a certain page. So So make sure that you'll go back to the main page or something that everybody's got access to. You don't have to do that, but if you don't allow yourself a way to get out of the screen, sometimes it don't like it, and you will get locked to that screen, and then you can't get out of it at all without cycling the power. So when in doubt, just go ahead and do that. Return to display on logout, and generally you'll go to a screen that everybody has access to, so that you don't get locked into a screen that you can't get out of. So anyways, this is one of the things that we will be working with. So just think of that. And also inactivity. So with that inactivity, which is just what I was talking about, this right here gives you additional options for that. But we generally won't use this. We'll use this right here and this right here. So the two things I have to remember is how to change the screen size, and also making sure that if you want it to log out automatically after somebody has not been in there for so long, then you'll want to enable this, set a time, and tell it what screen to go to when it logs out. So that's it for that. The next one will be Runtime Security. Runtime Security is where you'll actually create your securities and tell it what screens or whatever to be locked at, and then you'll create a user. So you can have multiple users. You can have dozens of users. Generally, I don't see no more than like 3 or 4 users tops, because generally you don't need any more unless you have individual users and everybody's got their own passcode. But generally you see something like a default, an operator, you'd have like a maintenance, and then like maybe an engineering or something like that is what you'll have in there. So anyways, and sometimes I've even seen OEM, so like they'll have something that only the OEM has access to. So anyways, this is where you'll set that up, and the screen codes will have letter designations for those. So you can set there can be 10 screens have the letter A as a security, and then 2 or 3 screens that have a B, and then you would go down through here, you check these as necessary, and this user can get everything, and this user can get everything but one of them, whatever. So that'll be later videos, just kind of giving you an overview of this. So this is where you'd set your securities. We're not going to look at diagnostic list setup, global connections, but we will look at startup, because the startup is important because it has to deal with when the screen is starting up. These are some of the things that have to happen. Now, in what we're doing is we don't really need this, because I don't think there's any lessons or any of the labs that we'll do that pertain to this particularly, but there are certain times and places where you may have to go in here and tell it when it starts up, I want you to go to this screen, and it defaults to the main screen. But there's certain things like data logging and stuff like that. If you want something particular to happen when the screen is starting up, here's where you'll have to go and tell it to do that. Okay, just remember that. Okay, so now the next thing is going to be HMI tags. We won't be using this in our class. That there would be for a little more advanced class. Graphics. This is where you'll actually have your displays in here. So if you'll go to graphics, you'll see it'll expand out. You'll see displays, and then you're going to hit the plus sign to expand it, and you're going to double click on this main. So this right here is the first screen that you'll have, and it is actually defaulted. So it's already got this one screen. It's blank, but it's already pre-made for you to get you started. So that's kind of how you get going. So just let you know, you'll need to understand, don't get overwhelmed by all these different listings, because there's a bunch of stuff that we won't even be using, but you will be learning the basics of how to program an HMI, and it'll be 90% of anything you would ever use. So anyways, so now we'll go on down through here, global objects, symbol factory. The symbol factory has got, just like it says, symbols of things that you can actually bring into your projects to use, so you don't have to draw these things out. A lot of times it'll have a lot of things that's already in there for you, so you can go down through this list, and there's all sorts of stuff that you could put in your screens. That way you don't have to draw them. And you can also bring in pictures and other things as well, but this right here is stuff that's already standard and it's already in there for you. Okay, libraries is also going to give you a bunch of different stuff to look at if you double click on them. So there's several different things you can get out of here to also use in your projects. So some of them, a lot of them you won't use, but then there is quite a few that you can. Images are also going to be like you can bring in pictures and things again, but these right here is right now what's in there is just the defaulted stuff. So you'll have these. I'll show you here. So it'll be a button like this right here with the two little arrows. So it'll be stuff like that right there. Normally you use them around keypads and stuff like that is what you use these right here for. But you don't have to use these. There's other ones available for you to use. Parameters, local messages. There will be a lab where we use local messages. So be familiar with that there, at least where it's at. This right here is basically an object that we'll be creating out of our tools, and this right here is how you will set it up. So you'll have to have this right here set up as well as the object, and when we get to that we'll go into more detail. The next thing is going to be alarms. So this right here is how you would set up like an alarm banner or something. So if certain things trigger a certain sensor or something that ain't running but it's supposed to always be running, you can actually have things right here based off conditions make a alarm banner come up. And right now, let's go back over to display. So right now in this alarm, this is the defaulted alarm banner that would pop up if you use this. Now you don't have to use this one, you can create your own, but this is what's defaulted in there. So once you set this right here up, your alarm setup, we'll open that up just so you can look at it. You'll see that. This is what it looks like. So here's where you'll set what triggers what, the condition or the IO that triggers it. This right here is the message that it's going to say. So you're going to say put all your triggers here. Here's where you're going to put the trigger you're going to use, the value of that trigger. So if it's 0 or 1, it's going to be a bool. If it's a dent, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. You cannot use zeros. I found out the hard way you can't use zeros for a trigger value, so it has to be something other than 0. And then when this trigger and this gets to this value, this message is going to display. So that's kind of how that right there works. So anyways, that's a little bit of that. So we'll go on down. There's other things. We won't be using the information. We won't be using this logic at control for what we're doing. So the next big thing, and this is probably one of the biggest things besides the displays itself, is the communication setup. And just like I told you in Studio 5000, communications is absolutely the key, because it doesn't matter anything about what you put in here. If you can't make this thing communicate with something, it don't work. It don't matter how pretty it looks. It don't matter how creative you got, whatever, it won't work. So this is the big one. So we won't go into detail about it, but I'm just going to show you a little bit about it while we're in this overview. So anyways, when you first start up and you haven't created a configuration for an application, it's going to ask you, do you want to create a new configuration? So for now, we're going to always hit yes, and we're going to hit finish. So in here, you'll see that you have to have a shortcut. So you got to call, basically the shortcut is just a name you're giving it, because you can have multiple shortcuts, but generally we're only going to have one. So you're going to have a shortcut, and you're going to say in the design, which this application here, this software here, is how we design. So what that's saying is that when we're designing something, we're going to say we're going to go find the processor that we want to communicate with, and we're going to add it to that shortcut. So that shortcut's going to say, I want you to look here. That's saying I want you, HMI, to look at this device that's on our network. So we'll get more detail about that. So this right here is how you tell your HMI to what to talk to from right here. So that's why it's very important to know how to do this. The last thing here on this Windows Explorer window, it'll be here under System. The only thing that we'll be doing here is under Users and Groups and under Users. So we'll look right there, I expanded, I only see Anonymous Logon. So if we double click on Users, or right click on it, I'm sorry, click New and FactoryTalk User, This is how we go in and actually set up users that we can use later in Runtime Security. So you'll put in a username, just like if we want to use maintenance. Usually we use a maint, which is a M-A-I-N-T, and then we'll come down here and we'll select a user cannot change password, password never expires. And then we'll go down here, and for this class we generally will use, if we use the maint, whatever the username is what will make the password, just so it's easy for us, especially so I don't get locked out of the screens in case I need to help or do something. So it'll be a maint or maybe an engineering or something like that there. But as each lab, I'll tell you what you should put in there. But again, just the username, password, and you got to confirm the password, type it in again. It has to match to create a user. And then once you have a user, then you can use that in your Runtime Security. So anyways, that's a little bit of an overview of the Windows Explorer for you. So again, I'll go up here and we'll just go through these few submenus up here. A file, again, it should be very simple. New is how you're going to make a new display. Local, this is how you can kind of shortcut. Instead of going to some of these places down here, you can go to file and create new pages and things like that there. From right here, you can create a new application, open application, or close this application. I will tell you that you see that there's this save right here is not there. Now you can come up here and hit the save if you've got something created. If you change something here, then this save should not be grayed out. See, which right now I clicked on it and it's going to let me save as. So remember, save saves wherever this was already at, wherever your application was already file is at. Saving it is just going to save it right there to that same place under the same name. If you hit save as, you can change the name and change the location of where it's saved at. Again, ever so often you will need to make sure that you save, and this option here I don't always feel comfortable with. So generally what I'll do is I would close out the screen that you're on, and I'll show you more in detail about that later of how to do that, just to make sure. These computers are very prone to crashing, and I don't want you to get several screens in and a lot of work done and all of a sudden it just take a dump on you and you lose everything that you've been working on, because they do not do auto backups, so you would lose everything and have to start over. So just keep that in mind. So anyways, print setup. So anyways, generally, I would you could do a save as, but I generally don't just do those here. But if you did want to name it something different or put it in a new file location or something, then you could do that there. Edit, just there's a bunch of stuff grayed out because one of the things is there's not we don't have anything in there. So anyways, but there's several different things we can go to. Display settings would probably be the biggest thing here, is display settings. There is some copy and paste animation. Connections are important. Some things like that. Some copy and deletes, that's important. But that's probably the biggest things right there under there. View, again, this right here. So if we see that right there, so that's how you got rid of this. So if you ever get rid of this right here by clicking that X accidentally or something, don't worry about it. You can always get back to there. Explorer view, it's kind of the same thing as in Studio 5000. So you got toolbars. There's a bunch of different things. Anything with a check is stuff that's already been displayed. If it don't have a check beside it, it's stuff you can add into these areas up in here. So a lot of times I don't like adding a bunch of clutter because normally you don't need them. So just remember file and view, and there was an edit. If you click on the screen, see how it goes away when I click off of it. So anyways, so if I'm not clicked in the screen area, it's not there. So then there's an objects tab up here. So you'll see select rotate. So if you have an object out here, you can actually click rotate and you can make that object rotate. Drawings, this right here, this area here with the objects, this is where you're going to get most of everything that you add to here. All the push buttons, anything that you see in this area here, most everything is going to come out of this objects tab right here. Most everything. There'll be a few things we'll get out of the library or something like that, but most everything's going to come out of this area here. So that's how you add your objects. Arranging is going to be coming very handy because that's how you're going to take like pilot lights, that's in a row this way, four this way, four this way. So you're going to have to get them all in rows and evenly lined up in columns. And this arrange is going to come in very handy. All you have to do is kind of understand how it's looking at it, and it'll work out great for you. Animation is how you can add other custom abilities to objects. So we'll be doing a lot of that. Animation is something that's very, very crucial in making your HMIs do certain things that you want them to do. The next thing is going to be application. So in here, if you're making a change to your application, you can do a test application. So because it is a process to have to download to your HMI, so instead of going through a bunch of extra steps and then finding out it wasn't the right thing you changed, this test application comes in handy. So we'll be going over that in more detail. Create runtime application. This is where you would take this design or this application that you have here, and it's how you would create a runtime file, and that runtime file is the file that you'll actually download into the HMI. So that's what it actually operates off of. And we'll go in more detail to that as well. Under tools, there is two different things that we'll use in this class, and it's going to be the transfer utility and the application manager. Transfer utility, that's how you'll download or set up the downloads and uploads of files to and from your HMI. So that's how you upload and download. Okay, the application manager is how you can copy, is how you can rename, you can restore, several different things with that right there. So that's how you manage your applications, your files and such. Okay, window, this right here, normally I won't never fool with it, but again, it's how you set up the windows to be displayed down here. So if you have multiple windows or something open, you can change how they're displaying. Help, the only thing that I've ever had to do in here, there is some online guides here and stuff that you can use that are available, is that sometimes I've had to go into here and find out what software version or whatnot that I'm running, which right here you'll see release number 9. So we are using version number 9 of FactoryTalk View Studio, ME, matter of fact, and that's Machine Edition. So we're using version number 9, and that's going to be important to you because we're using number 9, but you always have to make sure you know what your touchscreen version is, and later in classes I'll be able to show you that as well. So with that being said, there's probably a lengthy overview, probably longer than I wanted to spend, but I think you get the point of at least a good overview of what the Windows Explorer has got in it and what the submenus up here at the top have in them. So if you have any questions about this, just please let me know, and I can go into each component in more detail with you one-on-one if you'd like. Just let me know if you have those questions. Just send them to me, call me, or when we have class, just let me know. All right, thank you.